Hey, Lucas, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's so good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so we met not too long ago, and I was completely um, intrigued by your career path. And I remember referring to you as, I don't know why, but Mr. Rogers kind of came into my head when we were talking. So, to the community listening, which are all artists, advocates, etc., describe a little bit about obstacles that you have faced in
Hmm.
sustaining your artistic practice.
It's an interesting question. I think that for me, I mean, the first challenge was I'm not naturally very businessy. And when I started, I read like business books to try to catch up on that. Um, and so I think for me, the that learning how to sell myself, I mean, that's still something I struggle with. I want to be able to just do what I do and people see it and go, I love that. Most of my work is in schools and public libraries. So people see it and say, I want you to come to my school. Um, I think so once I figured there's kind of a formula that I figured out, which was librarians for both schools and public libraries. That's 90% of my work. That's who hires me. And so I figured out early. Well, I had a friend who helped me, who showed me and told me that you have to be there's a Texas Library Association conference. And I would go there and I would exhibit and I would, again, like for me, I had to get over like the shyness that I have as far as like selling myself really. So I would go to that conference. I had to learn how to kind of like approach people and people would walk by and I realized like I spent a lot of money to be here. If I don't say anything, they are looking for any excuse to keep walking. And so I had to get over myself and just reach out and say, hey, do you have authors, performers come to your school? And when they say yes, I would give them a little piece of one of my songs and start a conversation. And if they said no, I was like, okay, that's fine.
So it's interesting. I did not expect you to say the business side of it, which
Yeah.
I love because I think that we don't think of artists
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs or as business leaders, business individuals. Eh,
Yeah.
I would have thought the challenge would have been, I don't know, more artistic.
No, I mean, so I was working, my first jobs were in what's called informal science education, which is like when you go to a zoo and somebody does a presentation at the zoo, that's informal science education. When you go to a park and they do like a birding walk or something like that, that's informal science. And I I got into that work like straight out of college and I was like, oh, this is easy. This is easy and fun. And it's like, I just never thought I'd be able to use my musical skills in that way. And so for me, the art side of it, it was like, I knew teachers loved it and I knew kids loved it. So it was like, how can I figure out how to make this work? Because I was working at a small zoo, um, and I was not getting paid very well, and I just wanted to. I knew that like when you're in the informal science education world, the higher you go, the less you work directly with kids. You're overseeing educators. And I don't want to do that. I was like, I like working with kids. So like, how can I do this in a way that I can make a lifelong career out of it? I mean, I wasn't thinking lifelong at the time, but I was, how can I do this as a career in a way that I can support a family? And so, you know, the parts of it that the artistic parts of it were there. And it was like, how can I figure out how to make this work? And then it was just like, this. I mean, I started before the internet, really, and so I was sending out thousands. I had my own bulk mail license or whatever that is. I can't even remember anymore. But you have to register with the USPS to send out discount mail, and I would send out 3,000 pieces of mail a year. Just always, I'd watch all these documentaries sticking labels and on these flyers. So it was the business part of it, yeah.
So I had a conversation the other day with an artist who is in dance and
Mm-hmm.
he wants to get into after school programs
Mm-hmm.
with kids. He's currently substitute teaching just to get by and substitute teaching anything. So
Yeah,
wherever they stick him. What
it's
advice would
hard.
you give somebody who wants to engage with kids and wants to pursue
Mm.
that craft? What advice today would you?
I would, it wouldn't be that much different than the advice I'd give myself in 1993, 94, which is like, look at other people, other businesses and performers who are doing something similar and ask them how they are doing it. Because most of us are pretty helpful and open because we've all struggled to make it work. And the more good things are out there, the better it is for me. Right? It's like it's selfless, but it's also a little selfish. It's like if there are good performers out there, schools want more, and more
Okay,
in other programs.
talk to me about that because I hear a lot about scarcity mindset. There's a
Oh,
lot of, this competitive nature within the sector. Go down that road about how you benefit from better quality
oh my
work.
gosh. Well, I mean, I am here because of like, I mean, Tim Tingle is an amazing storyteller from, he's a Choctaw storyteller from like the Houston area. Like he saw me, I met him in a storytelling, class, and he and his partner saw me and they were like, we can show you how to do this. Like you need to figure out, he was what he said, go to TLA, go to the Texas Library Association conference and like collect the names and be active. Like he was an entrepreneur. He had started a company that sold like jellies, like handmade jellies and preserves and stuff. And he did really well, but he hated it. And he loved storytelling. So he became a storyteller. And he showed me, and why did he show me? I don't know. I mean, he's just a kind human being. Um, I think like what I was saying, like the more good art there is out there, the better it is for everybody. So I've never bought into the scarcity thing. And I've had a lot of people over my career ask, um, for advice. And I give it in little pieces, right? It's like I'm not going to lay it all on them because I've done that before and people just, A, they get overwhelmed, and B, they're not ready for it all. They're not necessarily there yet. So it's like you have to have a conversation with them and figure out like, what is the problem you're trying to solve right now? And I'll see if I can help you with that. Um, I'm
Okay,
trying to think. Go ahead.
so how do you carve your niche?
I mean, I've just always been niche. I again, like this storyteller helped me get started, and he was really pushing me in the storytelling direction. And, um, he, he gave me some ideas, but for me, it was always about science. It's always been about science and nature and conservation. And so I tried stuff that worked better than other things and just dropped the stuff that doesn't work. I mean, I've just always been niche. I started as a zoo educator. Um, there was like when I started, the zoos in this area were not doing any outreach programs. So I was like, oh, I'll do the outreach programs. That's a need. Like schools want people to come in and do things around animals and science. So I'll do that. So I didn't deliberately try to carve out a niche. It worked because I have a niche, but it wasn't something I was super conscious of. Like I see like in the storytelling world, there are people who are like, I'll do ghost stories and I'll do holiday stories and I'll do folk tales for kids and I'll do grown up stuff. And for me, like that would be spreading myself way too thin. And people can really wrap their head around this is a science and an animal like a nature presentation.
So would that be advice that you would give somebody, is find your niche?
Yes. Yes. I'm trying to think if there's any like I'm sure there are situations where I would say no, but like people want to know what they're getting. And I think the more clearly you have defined that, the better it is to communicate when you're selling yourself, like what you do. So having a niche is helpful.
Do you think there's a difference between a performer and an artist?
So is there, if there was a difference between a presenter and an artist, I would say yes. But when you use the word performer, I think you mean art. And I think that means you're an artist. Is comedy an art? Yes, I think so. Singing certainly is. Like puppetry. Yeah, I think they're the same. I think every performer is an artist. Not every artist is a performer.
Not every artist is a performer. Are you a better artist if you are a performer?
Not necessarily. Yeah. I mean, so I like we'll get to that later, but like what is art? Like there's so many kinds of art, right? So if you're a novelist, you can be a great artist without being able to captivate an audience on a stage.
Oh, okay. But okay. So it's live. Performing is a performer is live or, okay. Yeah, I get that. So let's talk about art and education, because you are a performer, artist, educator. Are all artists educators? And I've never thought about this, so I'm going down a road with you.
Are all artists educators? Well, that word "all" is so tricky, right?
Okay.
But are most artists educated? Is most art educational?
Or are, yes. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? And wouldn't we say yes to that? Because
art communicates.
Right.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. This is what this is about. Like, yeah, right. Art. What do we say all the time? Art shows diverse communities. Art brings people together. All of that. That's all education, educating, eye-opening, showing a different point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how broadly you want to define the word educate. Like, a symphony can teach you things about yourself. Sound can take you on journeys in your imagination, and you can learn from that, right? So are all art? If I've forgotten the question, are all arts educational? Is that the question? Like, I'm trying to think of go ahead.
I was kind of getting to niche, which then had my mind go down to, I've never really taken somebody down the rabbit hole of my brain.
It's a dangerous thing with me. I will tell you, I am so willing to go down any rabbit hole that presents itself. Oh, you want to go talk about that? Okay.
Oh, now you see what my husband has to deal with on a daily basis. Okay. But it's what I'm on this mission, right, is the renaissance of art's relevance.
Yeah.
Meaning, and because we've talked, like, art is relevant to everything because it's such a there's such a broad definition to it. What I love about you and your work is that you have taken something that you have been passionate about, and you're using music as the medium to educate as wide of audience as possible about what you personally are passionate about and that you think is important for everybody to understand or know something about.
Yeah.
Respond to that.
I think music is like music and art communicate in emotional ways, in like that statistics and just verbiage doesn't. So for me, like the music is a way to deliver those messages in a way that keeps people tuned in, and it keeps them having, in my situation, usually having a good time. It like just to me, like art is just like everything. Like I think for personally, I mean, for me, the music came. Well, I don't know if you'd say the music came first, but they both go so far back with me that they're just like who I am. It's just like I'm a music person, I'm a nature person, and it's like I don't know how to disentangle those things. And so for me, like there's a big part of me that's just like I'm just so happy I get to make a life creating music, right? Like to be able to, and it's more than music. I make video and stuff that's not necessarily songs, but like to be a creator for a living as a profession is just so delightful for me. And then you put that together with like you're also talking about something that you're passionate about and is much needed. Like we need people to embrace science and scientific thinking more. We need people to embrace like caring for the planet more. And so it's just me. It's just like, it's just kind of like, this is so like, and I think that's for me, that's always been really important, is just like to be very genuine and authentic. And I think that that's one of the things that people really respond to in my work is it doesn't feel like razzle dazzle, right? Like I get up and I do my thing and we're singing songs, but I hope and I believe that it has like this genuineness to it, you know?
So I had a gallery. I don't know if I ever told you about that. I had
No.
an art gallery, and I one time had an artist say, so basically was asking me what kind of work he should make
Mm,
that would sell.
mm.
And I just was like, no,
Yeah,
you make
sorry.
what you make, right? And
Yeah.
so you make what you make.
Hmm.
You don't make what you think will sell.
Yeah, I try to just really I try to not judge the muse is my expression. So like things come to me and some of them are like not really going to be quote unquote hits. I don't know that I have any hits, but some of them are going to work their way into my live performances and some of them are not. And that's okay. I just make what I make. Um, and then sometimes things surprise me, both good and bad. Like, oh, this is going to be like, I love this one. People are going to love this song. and then, and then other times it's like something, that like, my most popular song, I think, is called the Chimichanga song. And it's about carnivores and herbivores and insectivores. And like in the song, I make these chimichangas with bugs in them and rats and birds in them. And everyone's like, but they love it. They love it. And like when I made that song, my wife was like, oh, that's going to be the hit on this album. And I was like, I don't know. I think it's going to be this one. And she's like, no, that's that. And she was right. Like, it's really hard to judge your own stuff. So I think you have to make what you make and make a lot of it. And can you make, ultimately it's hard because you need to make something that people that you find enough of a audience for that they're willing to pay you for it. So, but I think you start with making a lot of stuff and really pouring your heart and soul into it. And then that I maybe this is idealistic, but I think that people respond to the genuineness of it.
No, I think that's true. I think people can tell when
Hmm.
somebody's being authentic and true.
Yeah.
I really don't like talking about the pandemic. I'm just tired of it, but I have to ask,
Uh-huh.
how has work changed for you since that? Or has it changed?
So, I mean, there's a couple things that changed. I mean, for me, the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, I think I know I had been performing too much. And I was grateful for the downtime once I knew I was going to be able to make it through. Like that first month when you see all that work evaporate, it's like, what do I do now? And then we figured out how we're going to get through. And I was like, okay, I've got some time. I had always been wanting to work. Like there's all these, I do music, but I do multimedia stuff too. There's a lot of video in my programs. And so it gave me the opportunity to really work on those video ideas that I'd been saying I'll get to one day. So the impact on my work was actually, I was revitalized and my live presentations were improved because I had basically 2 years to really work on that part of it. When I first went back, the audiences were kids, a lot of whom had never gathered in groups before. And so the audiences could be a little rough. They were just learning their audience manners. I think that's mostly gone back to normal now. I mean, it's, this is so specific. I don't I work with librarians and like the number of librarians that either were let go or moved to different schools. I mean, I look at I'm looking at these people that I've been doing business work for years and like 70% of them are gone, So it's like, how do we, I have to kind of restart the business side of it in some regards. Other than that, I don't know. I think the other thing that changed is people this was uncommon before. And with kids, it was unheard of to be on a Zoom call, And now it's like that. It feels like I've never needed more to encourage people to go outside than I have right now. There's just so much tech in our lives, and that goes all the way down to toddlers, So I really feel like in that regard, it's becoming harder to, convince people that, yeah, we need nature.
You're back to performing live. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So have you changed your routine given that you said you were performing a lot? Have you changed how often?
I've certainly changed how often. When I was performing, I was aiming for 110 days a school year and then 50 days in the summer. And that's what I had to do when the kids were little. I mean, I just had to take every gig. And I still enjoy playing, but after the pandemic, I was like, I'm not going back to that much. I'd like to cut that by a third. And I think I've cut it by about a third. As far as what's changed in the programs, again, there's a lot more. I taught during the pandemic with various ages from elementary through high school. And that really, that informed what I do. I don't know how to describe it. It's just I was able, I had been for 25 years been doing a 45-minute presentation for kids. And that's one thing. That's a thing to master. But when you're a teacher, you've got to do a 45-minute thing 3 times a week. And, and it can't be one song after another and, song and dance. So it's activities. So I really took what I learned from teaching, and that I think I'm more relaxed when I perform now. And I think that I know that all of I was creatively revitalized, and there's stuff that I started doing during the pandemic that I didn't know I did all this stuff with construction paper and crafts. And I was like, I didn't know I could do that. That wasn't something I knew I could do. And now it's it's my thing. I love it. So, the pandemic, for me, was this major reset button. And, it's just, if you saw my show from 2019 and my show from 2024, I'm not sure you'd be like, oh, that's totally different. But I think there's a lot of difference there.
Have you ever challenged with proving your worth? So when talking about getting paid for your work.
Oh man, when I started, when I started, I sent out these flyers. Your first program is $65, and your next program is $35. And I'm like, so I came from like, oh, I went from earning like, I mean, this is 1993 or four. So it's like, yeah, I was making $15 an hour. So $65 seemed like a lot. Um,
Wait, I don't
so,
understand. Why would the first program be more expensive than the second?
so it's like the first one is like, you're getting me to come there and set up, right? I'm driving to your school, I'm setting up, and I'm doing a show. And I'm trying to get them to do additional shows.
Got it.
Right. So but the maximum would be like 5 times 35 is what, 180 plus. So the maximum is like less than $250 for a day. So when I started, it was just, I didn't think about, how much I wasn't thinking about the time involved with driving. I wasn't thinking about the time involved with promoting. I wasn't thinking about the costs involved with promoting. So like you have to like think about, I needed to think more about those other kinds of expenses that I had. Um, to be fair, I was working at a restaurant and I was, again, like I was making $10 an hour at the restaurant or whatever it was. So $65 seemed like a lot, but at this point, I think that I feel good about the amount that I get paid. Um, it took a long time to get there. It took a really long time to where I was charging enough that I could make a living. It took about 5 to 10 years before I was actually making a full-time living at it. And yeah, I've struggled with like, people, it's hard because people would say, oh, so-and-so charges twice as much as you do, and you need to charge what they do. And it's like, well, you can charge what people will pay, and there were not like, again, like I was supporting a family. And so I had to like, if I price it too high, I would scare people off. So you just have to, I just had to figure this is what I need to make for a living and then charge that,
So let's go back to what we
Mm-hmm.
talked about a little bit ago, which is advice. And you
Mm-hmm.
said sometimes, or I've learned not to give all of the advice because people, it's a lot, they're not ready. If you
Yeah.
could think of what is the most important piece of advice you could give a performing artist, creator today, what would that be?
It's a business. It's a business, and you've got to treat it like that. Because I think so many people, like I have made a living at this because when I look at the calendar and I see big gaps, I get on the phone and I call people and, like I get on the phone and I'll call people who had me 2 or 3 years ago and say, would you be interested in bringing me back? And a lot of people are not willing to do that. Like I am willing to do the things that a lot of people aren't willing to do. It's because it's a business, and it's an art, and I love it, and everything. My heart and soul is in this. But if I did not treat it like a business, I wouldn't have been able to make a living at it, and that doesn't serve anybody.
Did somebody teach you that, or is that something you learned by doing?
I mean, I think I mostly learned it by doing. So I will credit my wife her father was an entrepreneur, and she really got a lot of his business sense, and she was the one who was like, you just need to start your own thing. Like start your own thing and we'll see if we can make it work. So there, it's both, right? I mean, I've had so much help along the way, but a big part of it is just like once you've made that leap of faith and you're like, I'm an independent artist. You have to try a lot of efforts. I mean, flyers and phone calls and conferences and social media and YouTube, and like you have to try a lot of stuff and then see what works. I think the biggest thing that limited me for the longest time is because I was a one-man operation, I figured out a formula for what worked and I just kept doing that one thing. And ultimately limits me to like, it limits me to doing exactly what I'm doing forever. Right. And so now I have a manager who helps with a lot of that stuff and also motivates me to do different things. And so my business is now in a place where it's taking some new directions. And hopefully those are, again, it's kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. But yeah, you just have to treat it like a business. Yeah.
What would you change if you could now?
I would have, I don't know how, like, for me, like having a manager is the thing that has allowed me to like see that there are other possibilities with what I do besides just performing. I love performing in schools and I love performing for libraries. They're so much fun. But I also love creating like this YouTube content that I make. And I love traveling and doing little video productions. And so like we're looking at a possibility of like that could actually be more and more of like what I do. So having help earlier, I think would have helped. I don't know, like everybody I knew that in my realm, my tier, that had an artist, had a manager or a agent, it did not end well. Like I'd seen so many of them, and so my manager, I connected with her through a high school friend, and he's in arts management, and he said, "I see what you're doing, and nobody in my realm knows you, and I think they should know you. Why don't you have an agent?" And I was like, because I'm making a living. And again, it's like I've hammered this one formula over and over again. And he said, well, he said, if you'd be interested, I might be able to find you an agent. And I was like, I'll consider it. Why not? And so like that relationship with my manager has just like, I don't know how I would have gotten through the pandemic without her. I just don't know. And like now, like there's just so many more possibilities because of her. So I would have loved to have had that earlier in my career, but I'm happy and I'm happy with where things are and where things are going. And so I try not to think about too much about what would change.
Right. It's evolving.
Yeah.
And and you're always tweaking, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. Okay. So you alluded to this earlier. So I know that you know that when we come to the end of the conversation, I ask the same two questions. How do you define art?
Okay. I've been thinking about this, so forgive me because this is going to sound like it's in my pocket, and it is. The first one I came up with is arts are endeavors that activate creativity and a desire for excellence. I think that's my definition of art, because like you can call so many things art. And I do think like there are so many ways you can express your creativity, right? Cooking, drama, music, car design, graphic design. I mean, there's just like, we have creativity in it. So I think it's the endeavors that activate that creativity in humanity. The other one is, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go.
Well, the other one is like, this is shorter, is the intersection of creativity and skill.
And that then leads to, because you reminded me of a thought I had earlier, which is our problem solvers. I don't think, at least, so, and this is something too that I need to clarify to the world out there. When I talk about who my audience, quote, is, it has been lawmakers forever. Mm-hmm. I'm an advocate. I was a lobbyist. So when I think about how I want to communicate what art is, I'm thinking about the 90% of other people that tell me, oh yeah, I'm not creative, but whatever. So I think of artists as problem solvers. Mm-hmm. And you touched on it a little bit by saying, when you brought up the word excellence, mm-hmm. I don't know, that just made me think of your excellence. You're solving a problem.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever thought of arts as I think that I think solving problems usually demands creativity. And so I can see that you would put those two together. I haven't thought of them as partners in that way, but I do think as a creative, like you're basically solving one problem after another, right?
Right. So
and that's what I love about it.
Right. It's a process that your mind has to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what somebody who innovates does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so like this tree is from a video that I had a student make a construction paper fruit bat. And she loved this song of mine, and I invited her to help me make a video. And so she had to, and I was like, A, it's going to be construction paper, and B, I want it to be able to flap its wings. And so she had to solve those problems, and it was spectacular. And then I had to figure out how to make a tree, and that doesn't look very good right now, but it looks better in the video. And then I had to figure out, like, how do I make this fruit bat pick up a mango? And so I had to tape magnets onto the feet and the mango so that when it flew down, it snapped on. And then I had to figure out how to make it flap its wings. I mean, it's just like one problem after another. And so in that regard, I do think like that to me is like what I love about these projects is like one thing after another. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And it's one of the things that, makes me procrastinate because like, I don't know how I'm going to solve that problem. And then once I get in the flow of it, it's like, oh, I figured it out and it's so much fun and it's so awesome. So yeah, that's what I have to say about problem solving and creativity.
That's awesome. It's so much fun talking with you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, favorite color and why? You already know what's coming.
I know.
It's not like I'm surprising
I listen
you with
to.
anything.
I like your podcast. I listen
Thank
to
you.
it. Yeah.
Spread it far and wide with all your friends.
I'm like, I just like color. So I'm going to go with blue because it's the color of the ocean. It's the color of the sky. It's beautiful. Like you could just get lost in blue, Oh,
you have a blue shirt on.
I know.
What's on the,
I have a blue screen because so much of the puppets that I use, usually people use a green screen, and green screen doesn't work for me because a lot of my things have greens. So that's just functional, but I do like blue. I've got blue bikes, and I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, where the Wildcat, big blue.
Wait, isn't that the bluegrass state?
Bluegrass state, yep.
See?
There we go.
That's
blue
perfect.
Because of bluegrass, which is also my first music that I heard was bluegrass. So there we go. You give me a better reason to like blue.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. Okay, so how can people find you?
I am, if you go to YouTube and type in singing and then the letter Z, YouTube will fill in the rest. Sometimes it's hard to spell zoologist. So I'm on YouTube, and that's really a fun way to get to know my work. I have a website, which is singingzoologist.com. You can look up Lucas Miller. I think I'm the most famous Lucas Miller, but there's several Lucas Millers out there.
Lucas Miller, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've never been on a podcast before. This is fun.
So cool. And hey, I noticed earlier you were holding a pick. Yes? Were you holding
yes, I'm a fidgeter.
Were you going to sing to me?
I was just fidgeting, but I can if you want me to.
Oh my gosh, that would be. It can be a snippet. I've never done this before.
Let's see here. Well,
I'm like super excited right now.
All right, so let's see here. Did you know that prairie dogs can talk?
No.
They have like a lot of different sounds that mean different things. They can say coyote, hawk, person, dog. They say all these different things, and they can also describe them. So if a person's wearing red or if they're wearing green, they will modify their call. If they're moving fast or slow, they can modify their call. So it's kind of like they got a little language. So I was thinking about that for years, and then I finally... let's see, be prairie dogs, cute little prairie dogs. Peek out of that mound and take a look around. If the coast is clear, let your neighbors hear. Give a happy prairie doggy cheer. Do your jump, yip, I'll do my jump, yip. Everybody jump, yip, and spread that news around all over town. Prairie dogs up, prairie dogs down, prairie dogs up, prairie dogs down, underground, prairie dogs down. There's a little piece of the prairie dog song.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lucas.
You're so welcome.
You're awesome.
Well,
Thanks.
So are you. Thanks for doing what you do, and I sure appreciate all of your time and expertise.
Thank you. I will make sure that we link your YouTube and your website in the show notes.